No one's ever has actually asked about looking at evergreen trees, but one of the questions that we get out at the nursery and the garden center is plants for screening, because people want to kind of have something that's a year-round screen or year-round protection for birds. This is one of our nice native evergreen trees. How many of you, do you know what this one's called? Anybody?
Looks like a knotty pine.
Well, it is a pine. This is a white pine. This is an eastern white pine, or Pinus strobus. This is one of the most popular landscape plants in central Kentucky and probably all of the eastern United States. But it is native to eastern Kentucky. Not necessarily native to central Kentucky, but is very well adapted, except for the fact that when we have ice and snowstorms, that's what happens to these branches. If you look over here to my left again, this is a white pine that has somehow managed to shed most of the ice and snow that you have. Typically these want to be branched low to the ground, and that's how you get the most screening. You see all those nice branches, but look at how those branches are coming out. They're coming out at right angles to the trunk. So if you think about a tree, these get 100, 200 feet tall, and those branches go straight out. Think about how hard it is to hold your arms out like this, then add about 2 inches of ice and snow and all that. So these trees, once those branches get so loaded with ice and snow, if one falls from up here, it drops, and then it's the domino effect. So depending upon where the weakest link was, if it was a weak link up top and it falls on the branch below it, then that one falls. You get all that accumulated weight, and you get these branches that just completely collapse. And I have a lot of clients that have told me stories about laying in their bed at night during the ice storm and all of a sudden hearing a crack, and then crack, 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 and they go out and their white pines look like a telephone pole with all the broken branches down here. So that has been a concern over the past 15 or 20 years because of the numerous ice storms that we've had. So if you plant a white pine, be aware that when they get to this size, eventually you may have to do some pruning, and that's why they look like a knotty telephone pole right now. But it is a great evergreen tree when they're young, and you don't usually have an ice problem with them until they get to probably that size, which that one was probably a 5 to 6 foot tall pine tree maybe 20 years ago. And the way to tell the age of a pine tree, if we had a small one, I could show the young guys here and you could watch them grow. But typically, the pine sends up a bud, and each year you get a certain amount of growth on the bud. So if you can look at the number of, like here was a ring of branches, here was a ring, here was one ring there, there's another one, another one, another one. The space between each of those whorls of branches is a year of growth. So the only thing you can't tell is how many years it was down here, but you can start to say, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 years of growth got it up to that point, and then you could keep going and counting. But it's really fun to do that on a small tree, because a small one, this might be 3 or 4 years. But then as they start to grow that, on a pine tree, when that bud elongates, sometimes it'll grow this much in a year, but you won't have any branches. You have branches here, and then you have branches up here. That's just typical of the species, but that's 1 year's worth of growth. So you can get kind of an idea, and then eventually they get smaller and smaller growth when they get up to the top, but then you'll get the growth on the outer branches. So.
Is there any concern because there aren't branches underneath that it could topple over?
Well, as long as it's got a good, strong root system, it really shouldn't make a difference, unless for some reason the wind comes up and picks it up and there's not, because the branches actually act as a baffle to kind of break up a lot of the wind. So that would probably be the biggest concern, is if you get some kind of big uplifting wind that just goes right to that thick part and topples it. But they're pretty strong trees, even though it is a soft wood. This is the pine that you get a lot of your wood products from. But there's a lot of different kinds of pines, but this is the one that's native to Kentucky.
Is there a ratio on trees between the root system as they get bigger and the root system gets either wider or deeper?
typically, I mean, you're going to be having the same type of growth on the ends of the branches as you are on the ends of the roots. So those roots are just going to continue to spread way out beyond. They used to say just the drip line of a tree, but like I'm standing in the drip line, so you know that those roots have to be going way out further than that. And they don't necessarily go very deep. Most of your trees, even your big oaks and things, the roots are within the top 18 inches of the ground. It's not like these roots go way, way deep. So they need those roots that go out to anchor themselves and hold them up. So, but those roots keep growing for the whole life of the tree.